My name is Arash Azadi. I'm an Iranian composer and multimedia artist. I was born in 1994 in Hamadan in Iran, and I was raised there until I was 17. I began music at the age of 9 by playing Iranian traditional instrument called setar. But when I was a teenager, I was more interested in electronics like robotics and game design, 3D game development. And while I was in the middle of developing my first game, I needed to add a soundtrack, so I looked for music music creation softwares, composition softwares, and since then I never looked back, and I continued to learn how to compose and to compose. It was then 2011 when I enrolled at Yerevan State Conservatory named after Komitas. In there I studied classical composition, focused on contemporary compositional techniques with Ashot Zohrabian, and then with Vartan Ajemian and Vahram Babayan. And for me, the point that changed everything almost was when at the class of history of 20th century music, I got introduced to electronic music, academic electronic music by Stockhausen, Edgar Varese, and later on with music concrete, and with Pierre Henry, Pierre Schaffer, and Luc Ferrari, Parmigiani, and many other composers. And it was a turning point for me because I was coming from a background of like my high school diploma is in mathematics and physics, which was my main point of interest was computer science at the time, programming and 3D design and like working with like robotics and stuff. And it was the meeting point for me from the world of technology and science to the world of art and creation and working with sound. And since then I've been like learning how to use electronic software, and whenever I have my hands on analog synthesizers, I would spend quite a lot of time trying to learn how these devices and these instruments work, the physical modeling and working with analog sound. But my main focus is on computer music, working with different ways of sound synthesis, digital sound synthesis, sampling techniques, and all that is kind of the continuation of music concrete that was working with tape. I work with recorded media a lot, and sometimes I add multidisciplinary elements to my works, such as visuals, lights, working with motion capture sensor devices like Kinect. And I have a basic knowledge of Max MSP, which I studied online at Massachusetts College of Art with Judy Dunaway. And sometimes I use Max for visuals or for using algorithmic tools in composition, such as generating different sequences, working with numbers. And my work has a wide range that begins with acoustic instruments, then works for electroacoustic compositions, and then electronic compositions. And my approach to composition is a approach that is about diversity, and because I believe that life is rich with diversity, and kind of life is multi-genre. So I play a lot with this concept of multi-genre, beginning with my background in folk music, Iranian especially, and to pop culture, to electronic club music references. And in this specific work that Ballet No. 1 is an electroacoustic acousmatic composition for fixed media, in which I use different recorded media, using different sample libraries that mainly include extended techniques. Because I have when I was composing, I had a specific vision in terms of sounding and in terms of spectrum. So I was kind of looking in a way that, as a curator, looks through these sample libraries, that they have extended techniques and contemporary playing approaches. So I use those, and in a music concrete fashion, I then created layers. And in terms of instrumentation, it begins with acoustic instruments such as string section, choir, and other classical instruments with different playing techniques. And then some of those sounds would be modified and processed, and then the main point for me in this experimentation was to create a different palette of colors for the choreographer to have possibility to stage different scenes as different as possible. Mainly because I was influenced by contemporary dances, works by people like Sophie Laplane and Akram Khan and many others, in which in their works I met a very multi-genre approach, not only to dance but also to music. So in this work that will be performed through playback, through the multi-channel sound system, that for me the basic setup for this performance would be an 8-channel plus subwoofers, but it is open to be specialized in different acousmatic settings. So the other thing about this project is that I wanted to work for my first ballet in an acousmatic setting in order to create an illusion, because I'm very interested in the states of dreaming and illusion in its concept, beginning from the Gnostic philosophy that my own culture is one of the important contributors to this philosophy, with Zoroastrianism and teachings of Zarathustra. and the workings of the true world, true God, and the illusion, the world of illusion, and the fake God, and this mythological stories and battles and conflicts between these two. So for me, I wanted to create an illusion of a classical ballet mixed with electronics, and to create the illusion of this grand sounding situation. And uh, it is in 12 movements. Each movement is different from the other. I have also used some texts that were close to me in the process of creation, and like I was like reading something, or like for example, there is from Foster, there is from an introduction of a Zizek book there, and the idea was to be as theatrical as possible, because I wanted it to be a borderline with opera and like acousmatic opera as a phenomena, and which will be most probably my next work would be will be an acousmatic opera. I'm working with AI to generate text, and also create narration with different voice imitations that nowadays you can create. So that would be the next work, and I think this is my third or fourth multi-channel acousmatic work, because of some little technical limitations, and that I haven't dive more into this realm, and most of them, one of them was a performance for, in Yerevan, with saxophone, video projection, motion capture, and 5 channel tape. It was my first experimentation. And then one installation in Yerevan, one installation called Caravan Sarai, that was then showcased in an exhibition during Music Protocol Festival in Austria, in Graz. And in that work too, I worked mainly with folk material, and I'm also very interested in the idea of glitch as a problem of phenomenology, and as a phenomenon that can be understood in the context of reading history, and also the history in future, the past of the future, how our culture, specifically places like Iran, and places that are in the context of developing countries, that they are losing a lot of their own culture in the process of modernization and globalization, which brings a lot of questions about colonialism and post-colonialism, and that a lot of culture is being uh, damaged, or being faded away in this process, and how this culture in future would remain, and how much of it would be authentic, and how much of it would be totally removed and damaged. So in that work, I worked with that context, and it was an 8 channel, and plus digital printings of some deserts in Iran, as a concept of Caravanserai. And then another installation was in garage institute with creating a specific soundscape for a corridor. In there I used also 8 channel, and then this piece is my next multi-channel work, just to give you a context of my work in this field. And I'm way more excited nowadays to work with multi-channel setups, even more than a channel, and different ways of specializing sound. And but still my heart is with concert music, and working with acoustic instruments, orchestra, choir, and from solo to chamber to larger scales, and also electroacoustic pieces with live electronics. Of course, I have a very emotional relationship with tape and fixed media playback because of the possibilities of the details you can put, but also live electronics has its own psychoacoustic element and psychological element of when the sound is produced by the musician, from the musician, and the morphology that happens on stage. It is a phenomenal thing that nothing can replace it. And so I'm also excited to dive deeper into this realm.